ETHSofia. I'm Nicholas Krapels, the Chief Strategy Officer of Onchain, and I'm here to talk to you today about the future of RWAs, or real-world assets. It was 15 years ago when Satoshi developed Nakamoto Consensus, which was designed to remove financial intermediaries from the exchange of value between two counterparties. And yet, centralized intermediaries dominated the history of our industry. Mt. Gox, Quadriga, Cryptopia, BlockFi, FTX, all of these were terrible, severe market disruptions that forced eventually, and what I think we're going through now is a process of self-healing where we collectively as an industry learn the importance of self-custody and on-chain availability of less volatile but still native crypto assets. And right now, during this transitionary phase, we're still probably trusting a little bit too much towards centralized entities. And why? So part of why we end up using centralized exchanges is liquidity. It used to be simply that centralized counterparties had much deeper order books, which minimized slippage. But now, since 2020, with the rise of DeFi, and what I prefer to call on-chain finance, the efficiency gap between centralized and decentralized liquidity is narrowing, and this gets better every year. So if liquidity is becoming less and less of a problem, why do we still flock to CEXs to trade our digital assets? The primary reasons for this seem to be convenience. Users have to cross the blood-brain barrier, essentially, to go from on-chain assets to off-chain assets, and from off-chain assets back to on-chain assets. And this is incredibly capital inefficient. So let's imagine a user who did well to turn their initial capital into a nice grub stake. Maybe they want to protect that grub stake, but where do they store it? Right now, they put it all too often on a centralized exchange, and as we know, even if the most sterling reputation are not as safe as your own self-custody. Now, if you are trying to move your gains off-chain to protect them, you will lose out on the ability to come back into the crypto market, because if you move from off-chain to on-chain, crypto just moves too rapidly. You have a T+2 settlement time, which often stretches into a week or more due to business hours, weekends, national holidays, and other real-world scheduling concerns. So ideally, we need to remove this blood-brain barrier and keep all of our assets on-chain. On-chain finance is 24/7. Traditional finance has business hours. Given the trends of globalization and violently exponential technological progress, which type of finance do you think is the most suitable for the future? To me, the answer is clear. It's time to put all of finance on chain. According to UBS, total global wealth clocked in at around 450 trillion in 2023. Right now, the total crypto market's around $2 trillion. So in the 15 years since Satoshi has given us the chain of blocks, we've managed to put a whopping 0.45% of the world's assets on chain. Most of those represent value that was created on chain. So it seems obvious that that number is not going to persist, that over time assets will move on chain. And how's that going to happen? The answer is real world assets, or RWA. At Onchain, we believe that we are currently standing at the precipice of massive growth in the RWA space, and we're not the only ones. BCG and many institutional investment banks have talked about this for a few years now. But as regulatory frameworks mature and network technologies enable faster finality, we're maturing to the point where it is possible to enable the efficient issuance, transmission, settlement, and most importantly, highly liquid trading of real-world assets on-chain. But how do we convince institutions to bring their assets on-chain? This is where it's not just a technology solution. At MantraChain, we believe that bringing institutional assets on-chain is a journey. The question now for financial institutions is not whether or not they should be participating in the future on-chain economy, but how can they most efficiently and effectively leverage their existing software and infrastructure to best enter the future on-chain economy. Should we create a dApp? Should we make our own private enterprise blockchain? These are questions that will soon fade away. In the last bull cycle, companies came on chain with a variety of approaches like Nike, Tiffany's, PSG, NBA. They used L1s, L2s, whatever, and they created retail-facing dApps. The dApps flopped. Does anyone remember Top Shot? Does anyone still trade those things? But you know, we have to try these experiments. It's not a bad thing that it flopped. It was successful for a minute. In the B2B service realm, companies in finance and supply chain sold private blockchain solutions based on Hyperledger Fabric and even Enterprise Ethereum. No one used them. They never got any network effects. So how do we make sure that in this cycle, we don't get the same result with dealing with enterprise? The reality is that an enterprise's relationship with blockchain-based assets is a journey. At the outset, the enterprise is not an experienced software solutions provider, most likely. At the outset, they're not an expert at technological infrastructure. And at the outset, they're probably not a marketing machine. But they have assets, and those financial assets have value. So how do you start engaging with the future on-chain economy if you're an enterprise that creates such assets, but you don't have the blockchain background to bring those assets on-chain? Obviously, there needs to be a solution for these companies. At MantraChain, as the RWA market is rapidly expected to mature by 2030, some people say $30 trillion even, probably 10 to $30 trillion is a good estimate. At Mantra, we're creating secure asset issuance processes, infrastructure, software, and a community of builders that will be with you every step of the way when you're building your RWA strategy. The Mantra RWA suite is offered on 3 different levels, so your enterprise can evolve from tentative dabbler to a seasoned native asset issuer. And we can do that all within the same ecosystem. First, we have the ability for you to permissionlessly deploy. So imagine you want to start with a low-risk tokenized apartment, maybe worth 50K. You can do that on the permissionless side. Or if you'd like to deal with a little bit more size, you probably want to deploy it within our permission guard. So this gives you access to accredited investors and you can raise a lot more money compliantly. And once you've done those things and you've got comfortable with issuing assets and trading assets and providing liquidity for those assets and all of the things that those of us have been in blockchain for many years are accustomed to, but certainly are not normal in the real world, you may find out that once you're comfortable with this, you want to start your own enterprise L2. And you can do that with Mantra too. As a business's on-chain digital asset strategy matures, the industry will also change. So with how we're designing our RWA ecosystem, we'll have the flexibility to accommodate these changes. What's exciting about this is that the regulations are coming now to enable this. Like, we haven't really had the regulatory participants who are willing to accommodate blockchain. But as we've seen with Vera and Micah, that's happening. Even the SEC, it's been a slow process, but they are moving towards some kind of resolution. They no longer just throw their hands up and say, well, everything's a security. So that's progress. At Mantra, we are seeking our Vero license, so we have decided to set up shop, at least initially, in Dubai, and that is because the Dubai government is willing and ready and excited to participate in creating a digital economy. And so when you have a situation like that, it's a lot easier to move forward. That certainly wasn't the case in 2016, 2017, or even 2020. So the stage is set for exponential growth in RWA issuance. Unfortunately, what is very clear about global digital asset regulation, even though we're excited about we have some clarity, the truth is this clarity is going to evolve in a very fragmented fashion at different rates all over the world. And it'll create hot spots and cold spots for blockchain development. And those jurisdictions might even change from year to year. And thus, this needs like a little bit more modular approach to compliance. Within any regulated framework, compliance is not impossible with digital assets secured by blockchain technology. It just sometimes proves difficult to be compliant with existing regulations using existing blockchain tech. So it's best to kind of seek out a situation where you're working together with the regulatory body to create what is essentially the future of finance. Why are we doing this? We think that RWAs are the key to scaling the on-chain economy. And how do we know this? Because it's already happened. When did it happen? It happened with stablecoins. Back when I started in crypto, the total crypto market cap sat around $15 billion. This is end of 2016. And now we have 10 times more than that, around, I think, it was recently reported $160 billion in stablecoins, which are secured on-chain. So that's a 10x growth from total market cap in 2017 to total stablecoin market cap today. And what's great about stablecoins is, you see, the on-chain market cap today for total assets on-chain is around 2 trillion, 2.5 trillion, depending on the market. When you bring real-world value on-chain, it has an exponential effect on the value that is ascribed to the native digital assets. I would argue that Bitcoin and Ethereum would not have experienced such a price rise as they have had we not also seen an increase in stablecoin usage at the same time. Many people don't see it this way, but actually, stablecoins are a form of RWA. They just don't have any yield. So what RWA is sort of providing a layer on top of stablecoins, which provides yield, which is anti-correlated to price movements of sort of more digitally native assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum. Going back to my blood-brain barrier analogy, you got to understand that people at some point take profits, but it's really not in our best interest as an industry to assume that those profits need to be taken off chain into a bank in order to get the risk-free rate. So the first thing we did with RWAs in the industry was obviously to move beyond stablecoins and add the most safe yield in the world, which is from US Treasuries. So we have great products throughout the multi-chain ecosystem with Ondo, have USDY, and we have Hashnode, and we have a variety of other great projects that are working to tokenize treasuries and bring them on chain. This is a huge benefit for investors and users so that they can store their value on chain without having to be exposed to the volatility of crypto while also, combating the inflationary nature of fiat. So beyond tokenized treasuries, though, what else is there in RWAs? Obviously, there are many ways to get yield in the real world. And what are we doing at Mantra? Well, Mantra is just providing the ledger of record for these RWAs, and we're seeking partners to put those assets on chain. And we have a lot in the pipeline as of today. And not only are we looking to put those assets on our chain, but we're also looking to export them to Ethereum and other important chains, because that's what we are. We're the ledger of record for RWAs. So what other RWAs we have? Obviously, our first focus is property. There's lots of yield in property. You can rent it when you buy it. The difference in price between when you buy it and sell it, also the yield. A lot of different ways to make money with property. You should get that exposure from your crypto wallet. Why not? Why should you have to move your assets from your crypto wallet onto Schwab just so you can buy a REIT? But it's not just real estate. We're excited about bringing a lot of other asset classes on chain. And we should be excited about that as an industry. It doesn't matter where the provenance of those assets are, in my view. We just need to bring assets on chain. The first category is other sovereign debt. So obviously, what we mean is beyond US Treasuries. There are obviously European Treasuries, Bulldog bonds from England, and maybe even the El Salvador Bitcoin bonds. These things should trade on chain. Maybe another success story of on-chain assets that you may not conflate with RWAs in your mind is gold. We have the number one gold project in crypto is Paxos Gold, and very, very, very interesting to see the growth in holders of that token from the beginning of 2023 increase from 38,000 to almost 55,000 today. So that's like almost a 50% growth in a little over 20 months for what is obviously kind of a boring asset. Other asset classes, venture debt funds, like crypto funds run by institutions that you might know in crypto, but also hedge funds that aren't dealing with crypto should have their funds on chain. We're working on that. Art, I think it's a huge, huge opportunity to not only tokenize sort of legacy art, but also work with artists directly to create new forms of art and distribution of that art, which might inform the creation of that art. It's very early stages of this particular sector. And last but not least is luxury goods. There are lots of projects that want to tokenize. I would maybe categorize Pokemon cards here, but watches and jewelry and other handbags. Especially with supply chain provenance projects, we can embed QR codes inside the luxury goods so we know it's authentic, and we should also be able to trade those assets online, or at least speculate on them. So that about wraps it up. RWAs are coming, and RWAs will ensure that the blockchain remains the most relevant source of financial growth in fintech. Thank you.